it's hard for a good man to be king. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And imagine a little kid like me from Oakland believing in fairy tales. My name is Shahir Dowd.
Don't scare me like that, colonizer.
What?
Stephen Van Patten in the building.
Oh, wow.
And this
Surprise,
is the
surprise,
only
surprise.
podcast about movies, specifically the film Marvel's The Black Panther.
Yeah, it's not the title.
I want to say it like that because it's so funny how I've noticed this press cycle, they make it a damn point.
Marvel's The Black Panther.
They keep saying Marvel's The Black Panther. I'm like, you're not saying Marvel's Thor Ragnarok. You're not saying Marvel's Thor The Dark World.
It's not the, is it? It's not The Black Panther.
No, it's Black Panther.
Yeah, it's just Black Panther.
SVP, what up, buddy?
Hi, fellas. Nice to be here in beautiful Astoria, Queens.
That is right. You took the long ass trek from Brooklyn, and we appreciate it.
Sure.
Yeah, and we even let you have a quote at the beginning. You're the only guest to have done
You're
that.
the only guest to have ever had a quote
Wow.
at the beginning.
I think maybe, how many times have you been on? You've been on a few times now.
I think no, you just once for Ouija.
Just once.
Yeah.
Oh, is it just the one time? I feel
Ouija.
well. We used to be on Matt's podcast together occasionally, so I feel like there's more. There's a little bit of backstory.
No, we have a history.
We have a history, yeah, which is going to get tested today, I'm sure.
Well, if we're testing something of Marvel ilk, I felt it was only it was very important to get someone who has been a cohort of mine in the love of all of these things since forever. SVP, you and we talked about this before the recording. You are my longest term friend in New York City.
Ever?
How
In
about
New York
that?
City. We've known each other for 11 years.
11, 12.
Something like that?
Something like that.
And-
So then the origin story of Matt Kroll, as soon as you landed in New York, as soon as you got off the bus, with the Midnight Cowboy theme song playing in the background.
Right.
SVP was the first person you met at New York Port Authority.
SVP was the first person that I met that I sort of still stay in contact with, I feel like, at MTV.
Okay.
We worked together on TRL. He was stage managing that and news stuff and whatnot, and I was a lowly intern that he and the good ladies and gentlemen of the studio adopted, and I was PAing down there for a while when they were doing a lot of live
Yes,
stuff.
you were.
And
in full cycle, TRL has come back, and you're still at MTV.
and we're still
And I'm not.
yeah.
I am not.
Oh,
But-
good for you.
Yeah.
Made it out.
You've escaped. But yeah, SVP, you not only are one of my best New York friends, but also you are a horror writer. You are a television stage director, and you also host your own podcast called Beef, Wine, and Shenanigans.
That is correct.
Still a great title.
Yeah.
Still makes me want beef wine and maybe some shenanigans every time I hear
I
it.
feel like you would like
I'd like the beef and wine, maybe not the
You're like,
shenanigans.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it depends on his mood.
Yeah.
But you and I have been of the same sort of ilk of sort of entertainment and sort of bonded over that over the course of the years.
Well, yes, it definitely. Well, let's clarify. It did start with alcohol.
Of course. We
Started with alcohol,
Yes.
and it just kind of built from there.
Started
It was
with
like,
a kiss.
Yeah.
Like, wow, we like a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah, we'd go drinking after TRL, and then we'd be like, "Oh shit! Like you saw this random ass obscure thing about like DC nonsense or like whatever the hell's going on," and then it sort of went from there.
Snowballed from there.
And you were a large part of Same Night Movie Review back when me and Stephen Buja of Oscar Watch Podcast did that.
I was, because I was in a terrible relationship, and then you guys kept calling and wanting to put me in skits, and I was like, okay, lady I probably shouldn't have moved in with.
Yeah.
I'm going to go do a comedy skit. And, yeah, and then that started happening. So I spent a lot of time with you guys, actually.
And that was sort of why I wanted you to come on in particular for. I just feel like for any Marvel property, and this one in particular, because I know you and I have talked a lot about actually there was a Comic-Con video that you and I did back in the day when you were talking about how it was so different coming up, with involvement in all of these nerdy things, be from all different aspects, and how you always felt like you were a bit of an outlier in that regard.
100%. Absolutely.
And now we've come full circle. It almost feels like, at least in this small pocket of entertainment, for this one moment, and it's just like, it's fucking cool as shit. And I wanted you.
Look, nothing is going to make anything sexier than having a movie about it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I was going to say, it's no longer a small pocket of entertainment either.
No.
It's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Easily.
Easily, yeah.
So, it is interesting to watch this evolution and to watch people suddenly like run up to you saying, "Oh my God, did you know this is happening?" I'm like, yeah, I know. Do you know
I've
about
known
the Dora
for 30 years.
Yeah, I know. It is also interesting watching people who've never done cosplay before, all of a sudden interested in cosplay, but from a very specific Black Panther standpoint,
Right.
Which is, probably going to put me in a different kind of an outlying thing, because this Halloween I'm still going to rock my Doctor Strange costume, and I'm going to end up at parties where I'm going to be with 90 Black Panthers, and I'm just going to be like, aren't you hot in that thing? And that's, kind of going to be how I'm going to play my Halloween.
Okay.
Listen, A, your Doctor Strange is on point.
Thank you.
B, if they give you shit, just start throwing some Eye of a Motto at them, and then maybe they can go back in time and learn a thing or two.
Yeah, well, there's that.
But yeah, so I don't know. I was super psyched that you made it all the way out here to discuss this newest Marvel film with us.
Speaking of which,
I'm glad to be here.
I wanted to jump into some tweets that we've been receiving. Actually, there was an interesting Twitter thread that I saw this week speaking directly about white people wearing Black Panther costumes.
Really?
Yeah, whether that was going to be the new version of blackface, and I think they eventually landed on no, it's cool. White people can wear Black Panther costumes. How do you guys feel about that? It was a thing on Twitter that I kind of stumbled upon. It was a rabbit hole that I thought was kind of interesting. I have no argument about it one way or the other, but I was kind of curious what you guys thought about that.
Okay, well, being the duly appointed representative, I'll take it from this point. Look, the costume is fine. Now, if you start putting on
Blackface
under the costume, we have an issue.
Yeah.
Like, you might actually need real claws to get home. And I'm just putting that out in general. The thing about Marvel superheroes is they're symbols.
Right.
So just like I'm not uncomfortable wearing a Doctor Strange costume because I think I can pull that off and it's fine. Anybody that thinks that they can pull off a Black Panther costume, that's fine as long as you're not mocking the symbolism.
Right.
I think you're fine.
It'll be an interesting one though, I think, because and I think this will be something we talk about during this episode, is that Black Panther's blackness is inherent to his costume. It's inherent to the Black Panther identity is his blackness. It's, like we don't have white Iron Man. We don't have,
we do. It's just not in the title.
Yeah, exactly. But Black Panther is very distinctly Black Panther. So I think there's an interesting, look, again, I think these conversations are sort of just a fun thing to discuss, and it's a fun way to kind of, and the Halloween costume issue becomes interesting every year because people want to talk about it. It's not life or death, but it's interesting.
I think just coming from your very generic straight cis white dude costume Halloween perspective, I wouldn't do it.
Right.
Because
you would think about it, right? You would consider no, I'm not saying you would think about doing it. You'd consider the implications of doing it.
Yeah, okay, so Black Panther, just and even this is beyond the film, is not a character that I like the character a lot, but it's not one that like I relate to on a very incredibly personal level. Therefore, that sort of takes characters, no matter who they are, out of the running for me to sort of dress up as, unless it's like a sort of one-off thing. But Halloween, I try to
The reason I think this would be interesting as well is that if you recall our Wonder Woman episode, our guest was, used to dress up as Wonder Woman. Bethany Towns was on, and she, used to dress up as Wonder Woman all the time until someone pointed out to her that Wonder Woman wasn't black. And like that was a real like moment for her. And I think what's going to be great this year is you're going to have a lot of young little African-American kids walking around with a costume that they can fully own.
Yes.
And I think that's going to be amazing.
Yes.
And it's the same with when Wonder Woman came out as a movie, you can have a lot of young girls dress up as Wonder Woman, and it's a costume they can fully own.
And I'll even go a step further. I don't know if this is correct or not, but I guess it's just sort of my opinion. I think any kid should be able to dress up as anything they want for Halloween. It's when you get to a point where you can start thinking about implications and how your specific choice of dress will affect people positively, negatively, however you want to do it. And then you sort of get to that point of like self-reflection, like, why am I doing this? Is it important that I'm doing this? Do I feel important enough to do this? Like, that's where you should start questioning things you choose. Whereas if if your son wanted to dress up as Black Panther, I don't think that's a problem.
No, I think any kid should be able to, but it's just, like that there's that interesting dynamic about what is inherent in Black Panther versus what is inherent in Doctor Strange or Iron Man, or what is implicit within Iron Man. And this comes back to that, we had that great episode that I love doing, the Can Batman Be Black episode. And I think there's a lot of those issues are brought into this. At any rate, whatever we talk about with regards to Black Panther, I think there was this great video of this school that just learned that they were all going to go to Black Panther, and they all started jumping up on the table. If you can find it, see it. It's amazing. It's incredible. There's another video right now of a town in Africa that went to a Black Panther screening, and afterwards everyone was dancing in the aisles afterwards, and it was kind of amazing. And so everything we're about to discuss is moot, given that people are responding to this film. It was the same with the Wonder Woman episode. Regardless of what we thought about the film, there's no denying the power of what this film represents to people, and it's just the fact that it exists. It's big. It's out on the big screen. People are, it's making a lot of money. It's very visible. It creates this sort of atmosphere of pride. It creates this atmosphere of inclusion. It's a feel good moment. It's an important moment.
Yes,
it's an important
feel good moment. It's a moment of pride. Yeah. It's and having literally just watched it a couple of hours ago.
Oh wow,
Alamo Draft House. So I'm fresh off the plane.
You're fresh from Wakanda.
Fresh from Wakanda. I have to admit, I was moved.
Okay,
I was moved.
All right, before we get to your movement, I want to just jump straight into some Twitter feedback we've been getting on other episodes and other things that we've been doing for a little while. If you are interested in writing us in, which you should be, you could email us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. Hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod. And we've been having an interesting thing happen, which is a couple people are live tweeting.
This is a first.
Yeah, live tweeting while listening to episodes of ours, which is great. I love it.
Yeah, that's cool as shit. So thank you for doing that.
I want to just come to a couple of tweets from Jonathan Blade, who's been listening to a lot of back catalog episodes. One that I love is making dinner, listening to your Spotlight cast. I enjoyed the film and thought it was an acceptable Best Picture, but that Matt dislikes sterile-looking procedurals is fully understandable.
Oh, thank you for both sides of the argument.
There you go.
Jacob the Blade.
Yeah, there you go. He also had a response to, I think, on the Call Me By Your Name episode, or maybe it was the Phantom Thread episode. We got into a bit of a thing about what is pretentious in cinema. I hate the way that phrase has been used sometimes in describing films.
Sure.
Jonathan Blade comes back with pretentious, as in look how much smarter I am than my audience. It does mean something. It's the intention to entertain the creator without regard to the audience, sometimes with intentional disdain for the audience. I think that's 100% accurate. I don't think that's the way we were using that phrase to describe movies.
I kind of was.
Really?
Yeah, I don't want to get too deep into it because there's more important things to talk about, but that's something worthy of discussion later. I like that definition a lot.
Yeah, I think that definition is absolutely 100% correct. I don't think that's quite how we were using it, but regardless, let's go back to that another day.
Sure.
Jose Font, or is it Josie Font? I don't know. We asked on our best of episode what was the best movie that we hadn't reviewed that year. I think my one was A Ghost Story. Yours was actually on the show, so it didn't matter. The best movie you saw that year.
Yeah.
So and that was Guardians of the Galaxy 2. All right.
Was.
For Jose or Josie, it was the best movie we haven't reviewed was Coco.
I think Josie would have an eye in it.
Yeah, probably. But people spell things wrong on Twitter.
Sure.
It was Coco, which is a film I have been meaning to see. It's become this thing that Pixar films used to be you had to see every single one that came out, but now there's a lot of them come out. And I'm like, oh, I haven't seen that. And Coco was one I haven't seen. And I think Coco is important in that question of representation as well. Because it is an important moment to have a Pixar film that's very Hispanic. Very much about a culture that we don't see on screen a lot.
Yeah.
So I would love to go back and revisit Coco at some time, and also in the never-ending quest to find films that might might be appropriate for my child.
There you go.
He also live tweeted that if Shahir was giving the Oscars, it would go something along like this. And the Oscar to Best Picture goes to any of the following 10 movies, and the list could change at any moment.
Yeah, that is 100. That is why you will never be hired for that job.
I will Warren Beatty that job so hard. Yeah. Thank you so much for those tweets.
Yes, thank you.
Warren Beatty.
Poor Warren Beatty.
I have a request for listeners. Obviously, tweet at us, live tweet our episodes if you like. That's been super fun. Email us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. Tweet at us at onlymoviepod. Review us on iTunes. Obviously, that's always helpful. But something I wanted to ask each and every one of you is, this is sort of a bit of a weird, slight personal ask. And that is, if you enjoy the show and you get into discussions with people about podcasts, or even if a friend asks you, like, what is there something I should be listening to, please consider us as the answer to that question. I've gotten a lot of people come to me recently telling me that a friend has told them about it's been like a tertiary friend of a friend. And it's like, it's been a weird sort of word of mouth thing. And I realized I'd never actually asked for that small favor, because the more people that listen, the more we can do this. And it seems to be that's been another prominent way people have found us, is through word of mouth. So if it comes up in conversation and you enjoy the conversations that we have that you just brought up in your own, then please tell other people about us, and then they can choose a side and between me and Shahir, and we can continue this eternal war we've built.
Spread the good word. Spread the good word.
So
the battle rages on.
Thank you in advance.
All right, Black Panther. I have to admit, I don't know a lot about Black Panther. I've only seen him, like, literally seeing him in Civil War. Was it Civil War that he first appeared?
Yes.
Was like the first time I'd ever seen him. I think I.
Well, that's the first time outside of the cartoons, he's ever been.
I would venture to get. I would like to say that I'd heard of him before that, or I'd heard about the character before that. But I really. If I'd heard of it, it didn't make an impression on me.
You could debate over how hard Marvel pushed Black Panther over the years.
Yeah. As a comic book character?
As a comic book character.
Yeah.
It's up for debate.
Yeah.
Obviously, he debuted in the 60s. He was their first serious attempt at making a positive black character.
He debuted on the Fantastic Four, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
But, as to their commitment to the book itself.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could pick apart Marvel's history on and whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, they're like any other publishing company. Whatever sells, they're going to push.
Sure.
And, you've got that whole, I want to say, like, most of the 90s was Wolverine and Wolverine guesting in everybody else's book.
Yeah.
Right.
Or Image Comics.
and that too, yes. So, a lot of that stuff got buried in whatever. I think, for good reason, with the way the characters have been dispersed through the movie houses, they had to start digging into, it's like, who's available, who do we still have the rights to,
right?
Because we've built up this whole big thing.
Yeah.
Now, for a traditionalist like myself, you hear about this and the big fear is they're going to turn this into what a lot of movies that are supposed to be positive and black themed turn out to be, like Mississippi Burning ends up being more about the FBI agents than
right
than the actual people suffering and that got involved in all the stuff that
legitimately happened. Yeah.
Right.
And even in the Black Panther case, Everett Ross was the character that kind of was the white gateway into Black Panther, right? He's the character that's played by Martin Freeman in the books, in the film, was kind of like the gateway character.
Well, you gotta you gotta give gotta get one in there somewhere, right? I guess so that's fine. It is what it is. But my first glimmer of hope that this was going to get handled correctly was when I saw the cast list.
Right.
And I saw all of those faces and all of those names and Forrest Whitaker and Angela Bassett and all. And I was like, oh, so that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Right.
I was a little put off when I found out that Ava DuVernay was in talks and then backed out.
Yeah. Because she's great. She's found her own, her own Disney product.
Oh no, exactly.
A Wrinkle in Time
is which actually looks crazy. So
I haven't watched the trailer.
All right. Well, then, I'm not gonna.
No. I'm excited for her as a filmmaker, and I don't want to spoil the experience of watching that movie.
Okay.
Yeah. And also, it was entirely filmed in New Zealand, so it's like I don't.
So you're actually
you're invested.
I'm invested in.
Okay,
I want to see where this goes.
I like this. Shahir invested.
Yeah.
Okay.
When does Shahir not be invested in a film?
Okay. Let's go back to the back catalog, and you can dig for when that happens.
Okay. All right, let's go. But it sounds like you guys have a personal history with you particularly have a personal history with Black Panther.
I have. Not from the very beginning. Yeah. But definitely when Reggie Hudlin was in charge of the books, and then when they paired him up to be married with Storm, and a little bit here and there. Admittedly, because I'm such a supernatural freak, actually Blade was the guy I was focused on.
Yeah,
as a kid.
Yeah,
and they introduced him in like 1972.
Right.
So it was. That was really more where I gravitated from, and then ironically, he shows up in the movies dressed like me. So
you think Blade got his wardrobe choices from you?
You know what? I get so much shit about that. By the way,
why? No, you know what?
Wesley Snipes was, and the production designer were like peeping on your Instagram.
Well, yes, preemptively.
Preemptive Instagram.
Well, I do know for a fact because I bought them for you. You own almost every Blade weapon.
There is that too. There is that too. There's a great story that Matt and I have in our history of him, buying me a Christmas gift that got delivered to 1515 Broadway, where we used to work.
Yep.
And where you still worked at, I guess.
Yeah.
And security had to come get me and bring me to this office because I had to leave the building with the gift immediately.
Because it was a weapon.
Because it was a replica of the Blade sword. And the hit vampire at
1515 was not happy about this being on the property. Is that right?
And that was pretty much it. Yes, exactly. Mr. Redstone himself was like, you know what? No, fellas. I'm not,
I smell this thing.
You need to get out of here with that BS.
It is, listen, some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
That's right.
So in that particular case, it was me. So shipping weapons to 1515.
But
Merry Christmas.
Were you invested in the stories? Like what? Blade was your thing, but Black Panther. Would you buy the comic books? Would you?
I have a few. Yeah. And unfortunately, I had a stepfather who actually cost me some comic books.
Oh.
And any old Black Panther stuff that I could probably buy a house with now, gone.
Oh wow!
Okay. Along with I want to say the original adaptations of the Star Wars movies.
Oh shit!
Well, and a couple of other things like Daredevil. First time he killed the owl. I had a lot of good shit.
Yeah.
And he cost me a couple of things.
Well,
I still have a lot of great stuff.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
So Matt, how about yourself with Black Panther?
Black Panther has been a character that it's funny, my Marvel love is not as long term as, at least from the comics perspective, is not as long term as I feel like I sort of portray or for the level of excitement that I normally give these things. Obviously, when I was a kid, I loved all the characters. I watched all the cartoons. I did all the things. I always gravitated towards that a little bit more than the DC stuff. I didn't start getting back into Marvel Comics until the first Civil War about 14 years ago when they started publishing the comic books for Civil War. And that I just went through and I bought the main one, and then I bought the front line, which is about the journalism, and then I just went through all the characters, and it was super interesting, just sort of the progression of all the different characters through that, and then all the major stories through that. And that's when I first started learning about Black Panther and T'Challa and the sort of how Wakanda handles all of these different things. And and there was a group that Professor X had put together at one point called the Illuminati, which was all of the big brains, like it was Reed Richards, T'Challa, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, they were supposed to be like,
because every one of them is like the smartest man on the planet.
Right. So and they were trying to fix things, and it actually didn't end up fixing anything. It actually caused Planet Hulk, and
there was a couple of attempts at that kind of thing, because there was the Order.
Yeah. It never goes well.
Little things, and exactly.
Namor probably fucked it up, but
right, as smart as everybody is, they still managed to make things work.
Yeah. So that's when I first really got introduced to it, and I first started understanding what Wakanda was, and I really like the idea of what Wakanda is. That there is this society that has surpassed most everything else on the planet, but they also really want nothing to do with the garbage outside of their society for a while.
And the other important point, going back to the quote, they avoided colonization.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's a huge point.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of gets glossed over depending on who's working on that specific book. Reggie Hudlin, I want to say, when he was working on it, he was kind of hammering it home. And then, depending on who else took over after that, it's like, but now, of course, with it being included in the movie, now it's not going anywhere.
Yeah. And that's great that they did. And I like it because they mention it in some of the exposition in the beginning, and then they mention it and then it sort of just sprinkled that fact throughout the different dialogue of the film, even down to your quote at the beginning of the podcast. It's so ingrained in the Wakandan, in the world that they've set up in their zeitgeist, I don't know the right word, in their society, that they did manage, that they were not a part. They avoided that. Anyway, back to the point. So Black Panther has always been something that I've always been very interested in tertiarily. I read again the same books when he and Storm became a couple, and they sort of had their whole.
They had a big wedding, and everybody had to put beef aside.
Yeah, it was a whole
Wolverine
thing.
and Nightcrawler were both like, "What the heck?"
Why that's put beef aside? Beef. I was like, I'm thinking of weddings where certain people can't eat certain food.
Well, Nightcrawler.
And I was like, was there a religious reason you couldn't eat beef at a wedding?
Nightcrawler is vegan.
Yeah.
Wolverine most certainly is not.
No. But then when we saw T'Challa, Black Panther in Civil War, the film, I was taken aback with how cool they managed to make the character himself, because look, superheroes are silly. And Marvel's done this thing, and I give them all the credit in the world, whether you sort of like or dislike the films themselves. They've made superheroes feel like they can exist in real life.
Yep.
And we've gotten to a point now where a dude in a full black cat suit, he's taking helicopter.
He's Catman.
He's taking M50 fire from a helicopter and just turning around and being like, really? And I buy it. That's something that is, I think, so special about the MCU, but also I never looked at the Black Panther running down the highway when he's chasing down Bucky or whatever, and I was never like, oh, this is no. But if you took it out of where it was, it's so silly.
Right.
But they treat the character with enough reverence where it all feels real to me. And if you look at Civil War, T'Challa's the only person that gets anything done.
Right, pretty much.
He's the one that cleans up the mess while Cap and Iron Man are beating the shit out of each other. And he's the one that takes the higher ground when the other two won't. With Zemo, he doesn't kill Zemo, even though Zemo killed his father. Spoilers for Civil War. And it was just this great arc of this guy who didn't think he was ready for a very important job, going kind of off the handle for a minute and then reeling back and realizing why his father was so important and trying to follow in his father's footsteps, which then in this film, there's
even
very
more of that.
Yeah. So I loved, and this is sort of get into the film itself, and maybe we'll start with, since SVP and I have been yapping comic book nonsense for a little bit, we'll go to Shahir first about the film itself. But something I really liked, and It's something I think it's not done well always, and it's something that you, Shahir, I think don't like normally. I'll be interested to see your take on this film. Is I really loved the amount of setup that Civil War gave Black Panther, and it let us jump right into. And you could just see Black Panther and not have seen Civil War, and you'd get it enough. But it was this perfect balance for me of like, I know the character because he was a main character in another film. He didn't feel tacked on. He had a purpose, and he had an arc in Civil War.
Yes.
It wasn't like Ant-Man who just showed up for the second act and was like having super fun, which, yeah, that's fun. It's not really meaningful. He's just there. He's the comic relief, and you can do that with Spider-Man and Ant-Man in these situations to kind of to sprinkle that in.
But also Ant-Man and they had their standalones.
But for instance, in Civil War, they didn't have an arc. They were just there to sort of, in order of correct setup for your own films, even though Ant-Man's happened beforehand, I would say Black Panther was done the best, followed by Spider-Man, followed by Ant-Man. Ant-Man was just kind of thrown in for fun. Spider-Man had a cool scene with Tony Stark, which kind of got you the Peter Parker vibe. But T'Challa had a whole fucking thing. And that was really nice because then when it comes time for his own film, we are set up enough if you want to be to jump into it just like head on. And that was something I really, really liked and appreciated. So I was super psyched when.
But you're also obviously always psyched because it's a Marvel movie coming out, right? Like it's a no brainer.
Yes and no. I mean, look, the second Thor I wasn't super psyched for, but I went and saw it and I enjoyed it fine. Again, Iron Man 3 is a film that over time I have started to enjoy more because I feel like it's a more sort of grounded movie, even though it's a Shane Black film. But I feel like it's a more grounded movie than a lot of the superhero stuff. I'd say, honestly, sadly, SVP, Doctor Strange at this point is probably my least favorite Marvel film, and that's not shitting on Doctor Strange. I think it has a lot of special things to it. But as far as a film and an arc overall, it feels the most samey to me out of all of them. It feels like yet another origin story.
Felt formulaic.
It felt super formulaic, and but I like the formula, so that's fine. So again, I didn't go into like Doctor Strange like real pumped. Like I was like, I'll enjoy this. Black Panther, I went into real pumped.
And was it because of the Civil War origin, or was it because of the sort of story of representation that's going around Black Panther?
I mean, it's all of it too, and I'll get into sort of, my very minimal involvement with that sort of as we go. But if I was just looking at Marvel properties and like the way, let's strip away if this was fucking Squirrel Girl. And they set her up as well as they set up T'Challa in Civil War. Then I would be psyched for it on its own. There's obviously the bigger thing of representation that we'll get into that helps that along. So I don't know. I was super pumped. But Shahir, let's get into. Before we get your first thoughts, do you want me to read the IMDb synopsis because it's very vague?
Okay. Well, I'm guessing people know what Black Panther is at this point.
IMDb says the film is. T'Challa, after the death of his father, the King of Wakanda, returns home to the isolated, technologically advanced African nation to succeed the throne and take his rightful place as king.
Yeah.
They don't drop Wakanda's name in there. I thought that was weird. Did they just
copy and paste from The Lion King? Like, I don't understand.
I don't know.
That was kind of whack.
Yeah. So Shahir, let's get your first thoughts on this beast.
So obviously I went in, my thing with the Marvel movies is I acknowledge the significance that they have around pop culture right now. They are probably the most important things that are happening in movies. And arguably like some of the good things that have come out of them is that they might be the thing that are saving the theatrical experience right now. Like the theatrical experience is kind of becoming really problematic for a lot of people, but films like Black Panther coming out and causing a big ruckus and people wanting to go see it and little kids dancing, at lunchtime because they hear they're going to go see it as a group in a movie theater is saving the theatrical experience. It's the reason people want to go to the movies. So I think that's a really big bonus for it. It's the same. And I thought about this movie in respect to my response to Wonder Woman, which we reviewed. Was it this year or last year? It was last year. In terms of how important it is, for representation to have a character that looks like you, whether they are a woman or whether they are a minority. And I think that's an important thing, and it's something that is interestingly implicit in almost every other major Marvel movie. Is that most of these heroes are white cisgendered males, and it's sort of interesting to have the importance of that dynamic be explored a little bit further. The thing that I wanted to think about a little bit, and it's the thing that I bring up in every time does the movie stand up on its own? And does the movie actually function on its own terms, regardless of that context? Like we don't, and the origin of this podcast was Mad Max Fury Road. We walked into that without any hoopla, without knowing much about it, and be like, and we're just like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is that the experience we get with the Marvel movies? For me, most of the time, it's not quite that experience. I want them to be good, but I often find that there's a little bit of a, like as you say, a little bit of a sameness to them.
Sure.
The ones that I've been excited about, in the last year, I think my appreciation of them has leveled off to a point where I'm like, these are great. These aren't for me, but they're there. Mm-hmm. And that would the films that I'm thinking about there are Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which is like great. It does what it does very well. Thor Ragnarok, great, does what it does very well. Spider-Man does what it does very well. Black Panther is going to be an interesting one for me because I think the thing that I mentioned at the beginning was, regardless of what I think about it, I think what the fact that it's out there and what it does is so much more important than my opinion.
Sure.
Then I think that's going to override everything I say. But I will say, I think the world is wonderfully realized. I think Ryan Coogler does an incredible job of balancing what this film needs to be and where it needs to be. Mm-hmm. I think that, interestingly, for me, in that question of representation, this film does something very interesting at the end of it that makes its shortcomings throughout for me, what I would argue are significant shortcomings throughout the film, less relevant because of what it does at the end of the film. So the ending of the film and the way it ties this thing together, and I don't want to give spoilers at this moment, are what make this film work. They aren't necessarily... There are I wouldn't say problems, but that sort of sameness feel that I have throughout, through most of these movies kind of is very prevalent to me in this film, in that, we've got, I think the first, I think it's really the first 30 to 40 minutes of this movie are kind of a drag. And
really?
For me, they were kind of a drag. And I was like, look, the Kendrick, like hearing that Kendrick Lamar is doing the soundtrack, getting excited that this is going to be, a film with a character where people are getting excited about it. And then the film kind of starts, and then we go through that whole process of secession, and then into a sort of this chase scene in South Korea that I think is kind of like, it's only when Killmonger appears on screen as a villain with his intentions known, which only happens at about the 40-minute mark, that for me this film kind of gets going. And so I found all that stuff before that to be kind of flat, a little, it's fine. Nothing really excited me. There was a single take in the casino scene that I thought was really well executed, that I liked. But apart from the theatricality of fighting and seeing Black Panther in action, I kind of found it a little. I thought his introduction in Civil War was far more interesting, and what they did with him in Civil War was far more compelling. And I think there's this thing that happens with certain characters. I don't know if it's characters or the way they sit up. To me, Black Panther was a really compelling addition to Civil War. I was like, oh, what's that guy doing? What's he about? When he became the central character in this film, I found him a little uninteresting. And I found his character arc kind of, fairly, I knew what to expect with him throughout this whole thing, and I wasn't that taken by him. But again, all of this is moot given what the film does at the end, and again, what it does with Killmonger. Michael B. Jordan's character is really interesting, and I think the other thing that aside from all of that I want to come back to, because I'm always interested in filmmakers and their careers, is Ryan Coogler, again, 31 years old. This kid's 31 years old. He did Fruitvale Station, which I think is an excellent film. Creed, which is a film I really like. And what I really liked about Creed, I didn't love it, but what I liked about it
I loved Creed.
What I liked about Creed a lot was that Creed basically took a mythological figure from that's been important since the 70s, and reconfigured it for an entirely different, not for an entirely different audience, but reconfigured it as as a different race.
Yeah.
In a way, he kind of took the Rocky mythology and made it important to black people. And I was like, that is a pretty impressive thing to do, and that's why I think that film really, really lands. So I think what he does with the end of Black Panther kind of continues in what I think will be an interesting arc as a filmmaker, I guess. And so I'm quite taken by that. I have my issues with the film, and we'll talk about them more in spoilers, but that's my overall impression.
All right.
Okay.
SVP, let's do your first thoughts. You just came out of this movie hours ago.
Yeah. For the most part, I loved it. And I understand where Shahir is seeing sameness, formulaic, and all that. I mean, let's face it. Every hero that's depicted in these movies, they kind of go through this sort of loss, revival, loss, become greater than kind of thing. That's basically what happens in all of these movies. So I get what you're saying, but for me, it's like I want to see that. So that's I understand if somebody, the beginning of the movie seems like a lot of exposition. I just heard one of you throw that word up.
Yep.
But for me, it's necessary to see it. And when I'm watching any of these movies, I'm not thinking about me, the cynical middle-aged black dude who's been working in entertainment all these years.
Right.
And I'm thinking about me, the 10-year-old.
Yes.
And me, the 10-year-old, is screaming with joy.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to, actually, I don't really have to try. I sit down in the theater, and the only difference is, I'm not in a hood theater. I'm in the Alamo Draft House ordering delicious wings and bottomless coffee.
Yeah.
It's like
in a French press.
They
give you coffee in the fucking French press.
Oh my God. So it's like joy upon joy upon joy. I don't mind the exposition. I don't mind, because you know what? I've sat through exposition for Batman. I've sat through exposition repeatedly for Spider-Man. No offense, Matt.
Yeah. But that's a really, Spider-Man's going to be an interesting point we'll cover.
And so I'm okay for my brother to get up there and be like, well, this is how it happened for me.
Yeah.
Because that's the hero's walk, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it was nice to see all of that. Shout out to Ruth Carter. The costuming in this movie is bananas.
So good.
Bananas. It's like, I can't even imagine. I mean, I was joking around about the dudes in the Black Panther mask, wondering why they can't breathe. But the sisters are going to be on the street as Adore Malaji. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I cannot wait. To see this.
Yeah.
It's going to be out of control.
Yeah.
So, and as far as the story arc and everything else like that, it's, because ultimately Marvel is still a business, and this has to set up Infinity War. Matter of fact, this might be the last. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the last movie before Infinity War, is it?
I believe it is. And then Ant-Man and the Wasp comes out in like June or July or August or something, like relatively quickly after the fact, after Infinity War, which is interesting to me.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I also appreciated the fact that, and, sorry if this is a spoiler, but I appreciate the fact that none of the other Marvel characters came in to assist.
Yeah. There's
his problems.
Yeah.
It's like, let him be him, let him handle his business on his own. And then when he shows up in Infinity War, then he's an enhancement.
Yeah.
And he's a fully flushed out, understood enhancement.
Yeah. He's another aspect to the Infinity War.
Right. So basically overall, I'm happy.
Yeah. I went and saw this film super early one morning, and it was full.
You invited me, and I was like, no.
It was an IMAX 2D film, and it was full. And I loved every minute of this movie. The beginning 40 minutes for me, I really appreciated a lot of what it was doing. It kind of gave you. This is what I think they were going for, and I enjoyed seeing it. I can understand if the formulaicness of that from one angle is not enjoyable or is incredibly enjoyable. What I really liked about it was, and I kept thinking back to our Can Batman Be Black episode. Mm-hmm. The beginning of Black Panther takes you through kind of every action movie trope that has been predominantly a white main dude in it, and shows you in one film that this guy is just doing all that shit. He's got the ninja moment in the beginning in the jungle. Okay, cool. Then he's got the casino moment where it's the coolest James Bond thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And then we have the big action piece on the bridge with the car flipping and shooting fucking kinetic energy nonsense out of I'm getting like these tropes that are normally involved in other white-led male action films, and I'm getting the whole thing like, yep, but look at this, and look at this, and look at this, and I'm like, fuck. And so I liked that breath it gave me of all that, and then Killmonger coming in and the solidification of what the story is actually about, even though they sort of hinted at it throughout, I really enjoyed. The first, it's interesting. The most visceral part of the film for me, weirdly, was in the first 40 minutes, and it's when he's fighting the Challenger from the what clan is that? The Tabari clan. That moment for me, when he's stripped of his powers and they're fighting, and like I know in my head like T'Challa's gonna win, but for whatever reason that fight scene in particular was far more visceral and real to me than a lot of these fight scenes that I see in these movies. And I don't know if it was because it was literal just hand-to-hand combat, two dudes fighting in a very interesting setting, or whatnot. But that, even though it was sort of like a setup moment, and you could, having watched tons of films like this, you kind of know what's going to happen. I felt like it did such a good job, both cinematography-wise, costuming, everything. It made it feel like a living, breathing place that anything could happen, despite the cynic in me having, again, worked in entertainment and knowing, like,
exactly.
I felt like, oh, and then when he won, I was super happy. So this movie grabbed me all the way through, and it's so funny because Wakanda is what I wanted Asgard to be. Like, Wakanda feels like a place that's lived in and like real, and like the characters come from there, and Asgard always felt like a green screen to me.
Right.
So
that's a good point.
So even in Ragnarok, spoilers for Thor Ragnarok, when bad shit happens and Asgard is no more, I'm like,
yeah.
Like, and again, Thor Ragnarok's supposed to be a comedy, and I whatever. But you've dealt with a mythological place that's supposed to be very important cosmically over 3 or more films. And I feel like Wakanda does more with it, and not even trying to. It's just through script, through costuming, through set design, through art direction. It feels, and there's probably like 3 sets in Wakanda outside.
Yeah.
But it felt real to me. And that's something that was super cool. So I dug this movie through and through. Actually, Shahir, kind of throwing this back to you just real quick, as far as you said, you started really liking it once Killmonger was involved. And God, how Michael B. Jordan managed to make a character literally named Killmonger, Eric Killmonger is his full name.
It's a full name.
Yeah.
Feel like have a legitimate arc.
I would say
and a legitimate gripe.
Yeah, and a legitimate gripe, and a point of view where you could look at him and in one angle of one slice of life be like, yeah, like he's correct.
Yeah.
Like that's something that I'm trying to think of another villain in a Marvel film that has done that.
I think for me, Vulture and Spider-Man was kind of close, close. Close.
He was believable in his sort of selfishness and the way he was trying to take care of his own. Yeah. I definitely get that. But even I'm talking about like Vulture was never doing it because he was wronged and was trying to sort of
no, he was wrong.
Well, he was wrong.
Yeah, he was
kind of wronged.
But he's not
by
going,
Tony Stark.
But he wasn't.
But he's not going after Tony Stark. He's being a vulture and sort of skirting around it and just being a criminal to take care of him and his own. He's not attacking Tony Stark. He is trying to just take his piece of what he thinks he is owed. Where Killmonger comes in and he's like, like these are the facts. Your dad did some shit, fucked up my life. Why the fuck is that? now I'm coming in to do my own thing. I don't know.
And he's also, Killmonger also, like it or dislike it, he's also representing a certain cultural vantage point.
Yeah.
And I think, so to me, the reason why I ultimately kind of was like, landed in favor of this film was that arc. And the reason, there's a real specific reason here, is again, it has to do with Fruitvale Station and Creed, is that one of the things that I always kind of feel a little, not bummed out about, but I feel a little bit like these films aren't taking the advantage of the asset that they have, which is that they have a director usually who has a very strong voice. You know, like we agreed that, and I think perhaps Taika Waititi in Thor Ragnarok was one of the strongest examples of like bringing what he does to this movie and not being swallowed up by it. It was one of my big complaints with The Last Jedi. I didn't feel like I saw the Rian Johnson that I saw in Looper and in Brick. And so what was cool about Killmonger, Eric Killmonger's character here, is that it's a continuation of thematic interest that Ryan Coogler has from Fruitvale Station and from Creed. It continues that, and it felt very personal, and it felt very heartfelt, and it felt real and authentic, and it did what I really dug about that is that it echoed the importance of why this film matters in the actual narrative itself. Like I often, like I kind of liked Wonder Woman, but I didn't feel particularly roused by that film. I didn't feel particularly empowered. Not that a heterosexual male is going to be empowered by Wonder Woman, but they should be.
Yeah.
And if I had a daughter, I would, like Wonder Woman wasn't necessarily the film where I'd be like, oh, check this out to feel like you could be a superhero. But the reason why Black Panther matters and the reason why seeing these kids dance in the street matters is actually in the film as well. It's not just a thing around the film.
Sure.
It's actually part of the story. And the thing that's important in the part of the story, we're in spoiler territory now.
Spoilers now.
Is this notion that Black Panther matters as an icon to people who've never had something like that. This idea it's a Bugatti spaceship. Seeing someone in their neighborhood that dresses well, that is going to outreach to them, that is going to create positive change. And I think that also reflects this idea of what Wakanda is. Wakanda as a concept is, it's fantasy, right? Yes. But it's also ultimately the great thing that science fiction fantasy can do, which is that it can reconfigure what our vision of reality is. And Wakanda is a great science fiction concept. It is this idea that you mentioned, which is that it is an African continent that was not colonized. Yes. And it is far more technologically advanced because of it. It is saved because of that fact. And what I like about this film, again, is that that not only does it set that up, it also challenges that notion. It's like, well, if you are this technologically advanced country that lives in this world where that is not the truth for the people around you, then what are you going to do about it? And the film actually, and Killmonger's character directly challenges that idea. And so I think that's actually what, that is the thing that I think really landed for this. In Wonder Woman, again, I'm just referencing Wonder Woman a lot because I revisited, trying to think about my responses between the two of them.
It's the closest in importance tone to this film in the genre recently.
But I was thinking a lot of like the scene in Wonder Woman that kind of works in that way is No Man's Land. The No Man's Land scene is the best scene in the Wonder Woman film.
Right.
But it feels like an isolated scene that's not necessarily connected to the entire. It's not what the entire film is about. But Killmonger's story and the way Killmonger brings Black Panther out of the invisible cloak shield is actually what that film is about. And the final, the speech at the UN
that was good.
Was good because it reminds us of who's at the UN at this particular moment. Nikki Haley, and if you guys have watched the last UN speech where Nikki Haley basically gets up and chastises the entire membership of the United Nations for not agreeing with the Donald Trump decree for moving the capital of Israel to Jerusalem, and says we will remember this. That is the exact opposite of what happens in Black Panther. And that speech in Black Panther then again just makes you realize, oh, this is why this is important, and this is what superhero films can do. This is what science fiction can do. So it's kind of amazing in that respect. Again,
I know where you're going to.
Yes.
It's funny because you bring me back to something that I've posted on Facebook and social media a couple of times. It's like, basically, if you're doing science fiction, but you're racist and non-inclusive, you're doing it wrong.
Right. Wakanda.
The guy who wrote Ender's Game, I think, has been accused of the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wakanda, to me, right now, is what I imagine, and this is sort of a weird parallel, but it has the ability to be the same type of beacon that, and in very different ways, but the same type of beacon that Gene Roddenberry's original Star Trek had to do.
100%.
And so look at all the stuff. This is a little bit more micro, but like look at Star Trek and then look at our lives now. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of stuff that Star Trek just decided, oh, this is a neat idea. Let's just do this. Like our smartphones are tricorders. The ability to just talk to a computer and play any song you want. Like these are things that are little minimal things, or even self-driving cars or whatever. These are all things that Star Trek.
It's aspirational.
It's aspirational. These are aspirations that Star Trek put out into the world. Mm-hmm. I feel like Wakanda is more, because we're not looking at I'm not looking at trains that can transport vibranium, because that's not a thing. But but
considering what's been going on with Amtrak lately,
oh god,
we could use improvement in that area.
100%.
So.
But like the great thing about Wakanda is I feel like it's not going to focus on this micro level. It's going to start getting. And I hope, and I do think with the cultural impact that this film is set to have, it will start more of a chain reaction, hopefully, of like starting to think about, real world African nations. Not even none of them are Wakanda, of course. Wakanda is a fake place, but it puts. There's something about putting it into the global narrative, even if it's fiction. Like
absolutely
something, the idea that can exist.
I think the most important thing there is the thing that Steve said, which is the idea that it was a non-colonized country.
Yeah.
That to me is the technology thing is it's all science fiction, fantasy.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about that aspect in regards to Star Trek. I'm just talking about the idea.
Yeah, but the idea that it was this non-colonized place, and then I think there's something beautifully ironic in the notion that this non-colonized country that is the most technologically advanced will come to the most powerful first world country to deal with our inner slums. There's something beautifully ironic about that. And I don't know if the film intentionally lands in that way because it is an American film. That's what it has to deal with.
Sure.
But there's something sort of beautifully wonderful about that. If you read, again, there was a UN report recently about poverty in America and how there are levels of poverty in America that are unheard of in other places, in second or third world countries. Sure. I like the kind of the relationship to a political reality that this film has. Now, I still think there are the problems of cinema of all Marvel movies. There are problems, and I do think the first 40 minutes of this film are,
formulaic.
No, it's not formulaic. They're just, to me, the problem is that they're dull and they're uninteresting in the way that Killmonger is.
Yeah, see, I disagree.
They kind of don't do anything for me.
Well, this actually sets it up. Sorry, I'm agreeing with you in a sense of sort of why you feel this way.
Okay.
Because for instance, we talked about how you felt like you just sort of like knew T'Challa, like he's just going to do the main dude stuff, and he's not
what I said.
What you said something along those lines. You said about the main character goes through a very similar plot line throughout the thing.
Steve actually said that.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
The thing that I was saying was that I think the chase scene to get Claw doesn't it actually isn't relevant to what was important in this film, which is Killmonger's journey, and I think I found the championing to find who's king kind of. I was a little confused by that because I was like, oh, do you become the Black Panther when you win that? Or because he seemed to be the Black Panther already?
Well, I think with that, they were more or less pulling from actual tribal history.
Right. But I mean, just sort of on a sort of logic level, does the person who wins that right become the Black Panther? Then why is T'Challa the Black Panther already?
Because he became the Black Panther.
His father was the first one.
Yeah.
Right.
So
but his father is no longer the Black Panther?
Well, his father's dead.
Right.
So
he automatically,
as part of the ascension process, I gathered was that it opens up the other tribes to say, all right, anybody else want to challenge?
Right.
Or but he seemed to go with the
succession? Again, this is sort of like trivial and it doesn't really matter, but it was like he seemed to be the Black Panther already. And I was kind of like asking questions like, what is the Black Panther's role in Wakandan society?
He's the protector of Wakanda.
Okay.
Both physical and
as a figurehead.
And as a figurehead.
Okay, but he's also the king.
Sometimes.
Yes. And also just to give you a little backup history, just something that was depicted in a couple, I want to say it was in a couple of books, and then Reggie Hudlin actually put it in the BET cartoon series. Captain America.
Yeah.
T'Chaka, actually, those two actually had a little head bump incident when Captain America apparently stumbled on some Nazis who were about to break into Wakanda. And Captain America was going to handle things one way. T'Chaka ended up handling it another way. T'Chaka ends up beating Captain America's ass and then saying, by the way, this is the last time I want to see you anywhere in this vicinity.
Right.
And it's only, this is only in a cartoon version that's, aired on BET and everything else like that. But the thing is, he's responsible for answering physical threats. He's the buck. It's one of those things where the buck stops.
The buck stops here, and he is, and that notion that Wakanda is isolated and kept private is part of his role.
Yes.
I'm guessing, even though he kind of jumps out at the beginning of the film to rescue some slave traders. I'm guessing.
Well, he was rescuing. And that was the other part about that. And it's like, as guys, I think we forget that. You're bringing your old lady to see the movie. She's got to have somebody to latch on to too.
Right.
So, it's like he was rescuing his ex-girlfriend.
And not even rescuing.
Not rescuing.
Just literally wanting her back for his ascension.
Right. I'm really waiting for the supercut of him saying, I never freeze, cut to Arnold Schwarzenegger from Batman and Robin saying, chill out.
Nice.
I just want to see that supercut.
Well, you should probably make that.
I should probably make it.
You should probably do that.
Yeah.
Exactly. But, you got to give, all of these things need some kind of a love interest thing, or else it just becomes guy doing guy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I it's like and I will say I was not crazy about all of the fight choreography in that particular scene.
Yeah.
Which one? In the Ascension scene?
No.
The ninja scene.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it was a little choppy.
Well, that's Batman. That's Batman style nonsense.
But even still, it's like with the Krav Maga stuff in the Christopher Nolan movies, I was able to make sense out of those moves.
In 2 out of 3, you were. The first one, you didn't see shit.
That's true. All right. Yes,
they cut around a lot.
No, but I agree with you in terms of the fight choreography. I found, especially around the battle on the river, the fight, the challenging on the river.
Right.
I found that kind of like.
Oh, I found that really powerful.
Uninteresting. I have to say as well, I found
that was very basic and very guttural. And
I think it was just, my problem was it was cut in a way that didn't give us the best viewpoint of everything that was happening, didn't give us the best impact.
I think it did. I think it gave us the most visceral in that moment, because there's a lot of times when the camera's literally splashing around in the water sort of with you. And are you getting the fullest, most clearest thing? No, but I felt like I was more in the fight than if they were doing these really sort of clean.
Then it was HBO
I felt
coverage. Of course.
It was just two guys going at each other with weapons and eventually fists.
Right.
On the edge of a waterfall. And that's pretty compelling in my brain.
Much bigger than the hero.
Yeah.
So but the way that they shot it, even though the fight itself, I don't think the choreography was the most mind-boggling shit I've ever seen. It was solid choreography, shot in a very personal way that made that made the fight, even though it was one of the more basic fights in the movie, feel really like shit. I'm in here, and made me feel again like I got to go back to that feeling of cynical me. I know T'Challa's gonna win this shit, but in the moment,
exactly.
I found myself. I was holding an umbrella because I didn't want it to slip or fall, and I found myself gripping it harder, and I was like, "What? This is the most basic fight scene."
Yeah.
But it got me. Something I do want to bring up though, and I guess sorry, I equated to Shahir, but it was actually your point about how T'Challa himself is just sort of. He's the main character in these. If it's Batman, if it's whoever, eventually. If they're the stoic sort of, they're always going to try to do the right thing type character, it can get a little old or stale. But this is something that I feel like Black Panther, the film, does incredibly well, is it surrounds him with crazy, interesting, I don't mean crazy as in insane, I mean just very interesting other
strong
characters.
Yes.
I mean, I was going to say,
the supporting cast was deep.
It's
is it
good.
Sydney is it Sydney Noel or Marija Juliet Abney? One of the general
okay.
Ayoke.
Was it?
Whatever her name is, the bald-headed general.
Michonne from Walking Dead.
Yeah. Is that Michonne from Walking Dead?
Yeah.
I did not know that. I did not know that.
That was Denai Guerrero.
She was far and away my favorite character in this. She
killed. Absolutely.
I was on board for every, and the point is also in terms of the fight choreography, her fight scene in the casino was far more.
It was great.
That was a fight scene I was on board for, and I was like, I'm cool with this, and I want to see this.
Letitia Wright for me.
Shuri?
was the standout for me. I was like, God. Side note, I'm gonna nerd out real quick with SVP here. I'm so sorry, but I want if in Phase 4, if Iron Man dies in Infinity War and all that stuff, I basically want her to become I want her to be the surrogate Riri to become fucking Iron Man, because that would make total sense.
It would.
Anyway.
That's what she said. I guess the only thing there was I was like, the thing I was most disappointed about was that she has this sort of Q, was it Q or M from James Bond role? I can't remember.
Q.
Which is Q is the
M is the boss, Q is the tech.
Yeah. She has that thing, and I was like the sneakers. I was like, we never saw those in action.
No,
it was like a whole thing.
But it was
that.
such a good joke.
It was a great thing, but it was like, but I was like, oh, because I guess part of me was like, trying to figure out what is Black Panther's thing, and we kind of, I feel like I felt more about what Black Panther's thing was in terms of like his fighting style, his abilities in Civil War than I did in this film.
I feel like they set it up well. I feel like they didn't really
in Civil War, you know what I mean? Like I was like, is he kind of like a sneak? You know, he's a panther. He sneaks up on high. You know, like he's got sneakers that are silent. You know, like he can do all. And I was like, oh, we didn't really see that. And again,
I was kind of glad that they didn't really make a huge deal out of what his powers were, because I feel like we see that all the time with a lot of different stuff. Like he's just a super powered human that has some great tech that we can put into sort of he's Batman with superhuman strength. That's what he is.
Right. I go with that.
Yeah. I also love. I feel like I've been just heaping praise on this film. I'd like to say something in regards to the certain section we're talking about now that I felt was a little bit droning, and that was, and it's such a minor gripe, but it was exposition for exposition's sake happened every once in a while. And by that I mean we have the whole Q moment where they're talking about kinetic energy in the suit, and we have a demonstration of it, and it's great, and it's fucking cool, and you're like, whoa. And I'm like, cool. This is the Snake Plissken moment that I've gotten now, where it explains all the tech, and now I can just watch the tech and enjoy what's happening. Yeah. And then the scene in South Korea happens on the bridge, and she's driving the car with the hologram, and she's literally narrating his powers to him again.
Yeah.
And that's just a fault in the script.
I did like the absorbing the thing. I wish it kind of like used in a sort of more interesting way, but I liked it.
But I understood the absorbing kinetic energy ability of his suit in the lab when they explained it to me the first time.
Right.
The second time they explained it, I was just like, she's like, literally, it was like a tutorial in a video game where she's like, great, you know what? You're charged up. Now go.
Yeah, but you know what? All I'm going to say, and I hope this doesn't come across as condescending to anybody, but everybody's not us. Like, sometimes I think you need to reinforce.
Fair.
Sometimes you need to reinforce things because sometimes people don't catch things. Because I got to tell you, I don't know how many times I get into conversations and
no, you're right.
I'm being asked, but wait, how's he able to do da-da-da-da? And I'm like, hold up, you didn't hear that? No, I guess you didn't because you were eating popcorn.
You were looking at your phone.
You're right, exactly. So
the only counterpoint I would say to that is that occasionally, I didn't notice it as badly in this movie, but occasionally,
there's only once or twice.
Occasionally, it can feel like you're going for the cheap seats, and
sometimes you have to, I guess.
But I don't like that feeling that I think the audience should catch up to movies, not that the movie should catch up to the audience. You know what I mean?
I'm with you on that.
I agree on a theoretical level, but in a practical level, it's just not going to happen.
Sometimes you need to explain. Like it's also could be one of those things they get into the edit. and like you play out that scene and everyone's going, I don't understand how this tick works, and so they have to
do it again.
They do it again.
I'm just trying to think of other, and like there's literally the gripes I have with this film are so minuscule. Like there was a couple green screens that looked a little weak. Like oops.
I actually, to be honest with you, the
like,
fighting around,
I didn't catch
the fighting around the water where they do this thing which I think most modern green screens do, which is that they overexpose the sky, so the sky is actually fully exposed while seeing a fully lit face, and to me it just highlights the green screen. It's sort of got this HDR feel to it. It's what you would do in photography, and I was like, and like part of that just makes the sort of unrealism of it kind of fall into play.
And my last gripe is also a compliment, which is a weird sort of thing. I feel like the relationship between Okoye and Wakabe, basically Michonne and the other tribe leader,
and Get Out,
was I love that they were involved, and I love the moment at the end where she chooses country over her husband. I thought that was fucking dope as shit.
Well,
but like,
were they married? I thought they were just lovers.
I think. Well, I don't know if they were. I don't know. I'm not stalking their Facebooks. I don't know their status, but they're in a relationship.
Yeah.
I wish but we only know that they're in it. We never see them together at all, sort of like in a more intimate moment. They're always just sort of like looking at each other and saying my love, and I get it. I would have liked to see a little more. If we're going to go down that road and try to have that moment, which I really liked, I think it could have been emphasized more if we just got a little bit more of them sort of together, maybe even like together in a nice way, and then starting the debate that they sort of fell apart from.
Well, now you're diving into, how much black sexuality people are ready for.
Right. That's an interesting.
And I know, and you're obviously okay with it.
Yeah.
But,
I get,
and at the end of the day, let's not forget, and just addressing, how earlier how you were mentioning how some of your favorite directors get swallowed up when they end up in these franchises. These things are franchises, and they come with rules. And going back to Ava DuVernay walking off, a lot of that probably had to do with being swallowed up in and she probably did not. There was probably some little thing she wanted to do early on, and Marvel was like, that doesn't help set up Infinity War. What are you talking about?
Well, another point about this is the thing that you mentioned earlier as well, was that I like that this story felt self-contained in a way that actually. It wasn't like in which was it? One of the recent Marvel films where a big destruction thing was happening. You were just like, well, why aren't Iron Man or Captain America helping out in this scenario? I think it might have been Captain America or something like that. I can't remember which movie.
It might have been Winter Soldier. Where you're like, why isn't Tony Stark fighting with the Triskelion?
Yeah, exactly, or something like that. I like, but the fact that Iron Man, Captain America, all the other heroes aren't involved in this story is both poignant because black stories don't get told to other people, and relevant because it's a story about an isolated country that doesn't, it hasn't exposed itself, and then it will by the end of the film. So the story arc actually makes complete sense
systematically and thematically.
Yeah, and I like the idea that this film operates on that level where the Infinity Stone thing doesn't even matter.
Nope.
And I love that it doesn't even matter. And I love that like and the point that I want to make there is the post credit sequence. When it got to that post credit sequence, I was like, why are we doing this? Like why not? But it's just like
it's there for the people that want. It's literally not in the film.
Yeah, it's not in the film. I didn't hate it, but it was like I
liked it a lot. I liked it because, and they even and I really loved the most integration of the other Marvel films into this thing was when they bring friggin' one of the hobbits there back. Martin
Freeman was Bilbo.
When they bring him back and his sister's like, oh, you brought me another white boy to fix or something like that, and I was like, yeah, because Bucky's there. Like, I liked it because they reference it, but they don't. We don't see him in a tube. Yeah. We don't it's just that's not a thing. It's just a nice thing. And then when they brought in, and she's the one that sort of is there when he wakes up. I liked that as a sort of closing moment.
I guess I liked it in Spider-Man when they got to the end credit and it was like, you guys are still here. You know, like that was kind of fun for me. Whereas this was kind of like,
you mean Deadpool?
No, when Captain America.
Oh, Captain America, when you're just waiting and it's it makes fun of it.
It makes fun of it. Whereas this felt like it went one step back to where we were. I just kind of
liked it. I kind of liked it, and I liked it that he didn't have a new. I don't know. I'm psyched to see Sebastian Stan as a unprogrammed Winter Soldier. I think Winter Soldier is best character when he's not being brainwashed and stupid. Anyway, that was just a nice little. It was a sprinkle on the Sunday.
Fine. Yeah. And you have to again because it's the last movie before Infinity War. I almost felt it was necessary.
Yeah.
I mean I wouldn't have died without it, obviously. No. I wouldn't have been on fucking Twitter like, oh, this is bullshit. You know, where's the tie into Infinity War? Yeah. You know, I wouldn't have been all outraged or whatever, but sure. I definitely I appreciate it.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to mention just before we start closing out is the real MVP, I think, behind the scenes of all of this is Forrest Whitaker. Because without Forrest Whitaker, Ryan Coogler's career doesn't exist.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Ryan Coogler.
All right. Yeah.
Ryan Coogler was at USC Film School when he got called into a meeting with Forrest Whitaker's company. Mm-hmm. And he gets in there and he's pitching a bunch of stories. After this meeting, he has to go back to class.
Okay.
And Forrest Whitaker's sitting there and he's seen only a short film that Ryan Coogler's made. Ryan Coogler pitches Fruitvale Station. Forrest Whitaker says, okay, I'm in, let's make this. He handshakes him, walks out the door, and that's the beginning of Ryan Coogler's career. One meeting, Forrest Whitaker sees this guy, says, I'm going to help you out. I'm going to give back to the community. I want this movie to be made. And Ryan Coogler didn't even have a script at that point for Fruitvale Station. So he has to go back to class, and you're like at USC, and he's suddenly like writing a screenplay that Forrest Whitaker has agreed to produce.
Well, shit.
And that, so, and I think, that the reason I bring that story up is and it's important to what this film is and why it exists and why it's important is that moment in Ryan Coogler's life and career is echoed in the final scene of this film, where Black Panther comes back to the community and, installs a good basketball court, says, I'm going to buy this building, I'm going to buy this building, and we're going to do outreach and we're going to help people. And there's this wonderful story. Ryan Coogler, after the premiere of this, went to a community college filmmaking school and announced a grant. And it's just this wonderful idea that, it's again that thing that I want these films to have, especially when they have a talented filmmaker at the helm. Is I don't want that talent, and this is a critical point for Ryan Coogler as a filmmaker. Again, he's only 31 years old. This is only his third film. You don't want to see him swallowed up by this thing and get his the things that make him interesting taken away.
I don't think it will, because he brought the interesting things to this movie.
Yeah, and I think and that's that point, is that I think he brought what was interesting to him and made it, but it wasn't just like a visual thing. It wasn't just like a little side thing. It's actually what the film is about. Yeah. And so, to me, again, if you just trace that back to Forrest Whitaker, who's in this film, it's just one of those smart decisions, those things that change people's lives. And it's just I love that story. And I love that
is a great story. I had no idea that happened.
That's so cool.
Yeah. That's where this ended up.
That's amazing.
From that meeting to Black Panther.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, do you want to do final thought, or do you just want to, and I'll do it, then SVP can take us home?
Quick final thought. Again, I think, the movie suffers from the Marvel problems that I've always kind of talked and hopped on about, but those are irrelevant compared to what the power of what this movie can do and can bring to people. And for that, it's worth seeing on its own.
Yeah. I absolutely fell in love with it. All the things that Shahir seems to not like in these films. Obviously, you all know by now that I really like them. But even beyond that, I mean, this is definitely one of the best Marvel films, and it could be the best. I'm always wary to say it like right after I've seen it, because I'm like, I don't want it to any new Marvel film to be like it's the best, and then you have to percolate on it. But I will say it is 100%. Definitely the most meaningful. I think Marvel film that they have released. And that's to a subset of people that I am not a part of. Like, I don't know. It was so nice to see a beautiful, competent, beyond competent, just amazing piece of action cinema have something to say, handle all of its bits and pieces with respect and sort of just, and craftsmanship and the ability. I'm psyched that now a feeling that I have probably taken for granted since I was a little kid, like seeing characters, seeing Iron Man or Spider-Man is really my cup of tea. Seeing these characters and growing up with them and having them be sort of a bit of an inspiration. And yeah, Spider-Man's a white dude, or Peter Parker's a white dude, I should say. Miles Morales, obviously notwithstanding. But I'm psyched knowing that like now other kids can have an experience that I had that they should have had a long time ago. Like it was very moving for me, and and from even just that set, again, I'm outside of the subset, but like I'm psyched for that to exist, and I'm psyched that Marvel decided to go the direction that it did. And this is an example, I feel like, of look, Marvel's a machine, right?
Yes.
It's 100% a machine. And then Movie Bob, friend of the show, Movie Bob, did a whole video on what it actually means, like that there's this giant cultural movement shift thing from a film that Disney owns. Disney has ostensibly bought our childhood. Are they now and this is, who knows, this will be for time to tell, are they now buying a specific movement? Or are they dipping their toe into doing that? Now, I always stand from the standpoint of you have to weigh good versus ill on these sort of things. Like you look at even Defiant Girl, like in front of the bull in Wall Street, the little statue.
Right.
That's a piece of corporate art. That's owned by a fucking firm. Like, but people have adopted it and made it mean something beyond what it was installed to do. Now, where do you derive your importance from? Is it where it originated, which was sort of to make money and capitalize on a feeling that's already there, or is the value, what's more valuable, the actual value that people start taking away from it and the meaning that it affects their lives and sort of goes into society with? So there's an interesting argument there. I always fall on the point of, and bring it back to Black Panther. Black Panther, in my eyes, the film is doing far more good for society as a whole than even its roots of, this is an action movie made to build money off of whatever. And I think the good that it can do far outweighs its origins. If this specific film's origins. I think
the reason there is that the ending is not about fighting; it's about diplomacy.
Yeah.
That's kind of why this.
Anyway,
matters more to me than Wonder Woman did.
Yeah, I also think there's something Wonder Woman. This is the point. Sorry, I got my points confused before. Wonder Woman, I think, is not as effective in this regard too, is because the conflict in which Wonder Woman happens, we are not experiencing, like the troubles of that, we are not experiencing legitimately today.
Correct.
Wonder Woman is it's so strange that World War I seems like so long ago, but the things that we experience in the cultural relevances that Black Panther brings to light are today. You walk out of the theater and you're in that world. So that, I think, is another reason why. And but I do like what you just said sort of at the end there too.
I just want to point out before we give SVP the final word there, is that it's interesting that, and this is something I'm doing as well actively, is that we put a lot of emphasis on a film like Wonder Woman and Black Panther to basically bear the weight of social burden, which we don't do for Spider-Man, Captain America, Iron Man, and those sorts of films. And it's kind of interesting that these films have to bear that weight because they're isolated and they're unique and they're a form of representation that doesn't exist. Yeah. So I hope that conversation evolves and we don't have to do that. Like I think the fundamental flaw with the Spider-Man Homecoming film is it should have been the Miles Morales film.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, it's just an interesting thought that I think I'm actively engaging in as well, which is unnecessary.
Anyway, SVP, take us home. Black Panther, final thoughts.
Black Panther, again, just sort of reflecting back, everything that we've already covered. There's power, there's pride. Look, if anything, if any takeaway of any of this it's that representation matters. And, this is what people have been pulling for a very long time. I'm so happy that it was executed as well as it was. On a personal note, I just hope that the conversation does not end with the movie and doesn't end with cosplay and doesn't end with okay, so that was great, on to the next thing in a couple of months. Like we talked about how this is going to have some far-reaching repercussions, and people are going to take certain social cues from this. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Especially in response to, like we've kind of been hinting around, the the current administration in the White House.
Yeah.
It's like, in a lot of ways, in a lot of subtle ways, this was a middle finger to all of that. And I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you follow my Facebook. So, all I'm going to end up saying here is I'll just end up repeating my, you guys, what you've all just said and, what I've already said. It's a movement. It's more than just a movie at this point. And I just hope that we build upon it. And, and that's it. I'm happy the movie's out, and it deserves every fucking dime it gets.
Yeah.
All right.
There we go. This has been the only podcast about the film Black Panther. No, it wasn't. This has been a podcast.
Don't destroy our lives. We live in a Wakanda-sized bubble where there no other podcasts exist.
We do. With no other film podcasts.
Smaller than that.
Yeah. And we are not technologically advanced.
We are not technologically advanced at all. SVP, thank you so much for coming and chatting all things Black Panther with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
When you are not gracing us with your presence, where can folks find you all around the interweb?
Oh, wow. Well, obviously, Stephen Van Patten, Facebook. I just use my government name. Nothing too fancy there. Let's see. Instagram and Twitter, I'm at SVP Thinks.
Yep.
And of course, if anybody's interested in any of the novels I've ever written, you can find them at www.laughingblackvampire.com or Amazon, of course.
That is Brookwater's Curse and Killer Genius are your two series currently.
And
what about Beef Wine and Shenanigans?
Oh, yes. And I do have a podcast also with three other lovely people, Mark Abbott, Kirk Johnson, and Taryn Lopez. They join me, and we go over similar issues.
Wait, what?
Not quite. Even though we will probably hash out some Black Panther with Black Lightning and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And that's at the Beef Wine. Best way to find that, Beef Wine and Shenanigans on Blog Talk or on Facebook.
Yeah. And again, I'm sorry to circle back to Brookwater's Curse. Anyone who likes fucking great, I guess I'd call it horror action. I'd say of a Blade ilk. The Brookwater's Curse series, all three books are phenomenal, and you should check those out. You can get those on Amazon and stuff still too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So check that out. Shahir, when you are not... I don't know.
What am I doing?
What are you doing? This when you are not focusing on past the first 40 minutes of a particular film, where can folks find you?
I'm always focusing. I only watch the first 40 minutes of any film. And after that, if you haven't got me, I'm out.
Yeah, you're like, fuck it.
Yeah. You can catch the first 40 minutes of anything I've made, which doesn't amount to 40 minutes, on my website at www.shahirdaud.com. That's SHAHIRDAUD.com. Matt. Between us, I'll take the first 40, you take the back 40. Where can people find you?
You can find my back 40 at MatthewKroll.com. That's MatthewKroll.com for my life and works. Also Skeletor, the number 4, PREZ on Instagram, or Emperor MSK on Twitter. You can also email us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. What did you think of Black Panther? Do you agree or disagree with any of the things any of the two illustrious gentlemen and my whatever the hell I am said on this podcast? Please let us know there. Also, you can tweet us at onlymoviepod. Also, give us those iTunes reviews. Let us know what you're thinking about us. And again, I do want to say, if you're liking what you're hearing, if you've made it through this hour and a half talk about a film and you're still kicking, tell a friend. Tell a friend about us.
Share the love.
And I guess we will. You will hear us all next week.
Maybe.
No, you know what? We'll be there. We're always there.
Do you think that people don't listen because we're in Wakanda and we're just broadcasting within Wakanda?
What? How does that
do anything? I'm just saying. I'm all on board with this Wakanda thing.
I thought we were in Astoria.
Yeah. Is Astoria?
Astoria is like its own mini Wakanda.
No,
we've developed in Astoria. We've developed the best baklava that you can possibly have.
Sneakers.
Yeah.
I'm gonna need some sneakers.
Sneaky sneakers.
All right. We'll see. I don't know where this devolved.
Bye.
Bye.
So long.